use of fake ID.
Unfortunately, there's just a lot of misinformation about these products. You know, we talk about this all the time, and I think half the time I talk to people, oh, that has nicotine. I'm like, yes. You know, they just think it's flavored vapes, vaporizing, you know, something you enjoy. It has nicotine, it has poison in it to hook you.
Thank you. Councilmember Pinzero.
Well, I have a number of questions. I think it would be really important as a starting point to understand the actual draft legislation that's being considered, so qualify or satisfy a lot of questions and curiosities that I think my colleagues would have. And you're actively pursuing this effort in a collaborative way, very similar to the way that we did in 2004. Are there, and be honest, are there any municipalities that have expressed a great deal of resistance to this in Franklin County?
The only ones that haven't been engaged have been Canal Winchester, and Grove City, and Groveport. But the rest of the cities in Franklin County are actively having conversations about this. Tomorrow we'll have a first reading of Bexley for a comprehensive flavor ban. We're also going to Westerville right after that. Reynoldsburg is going through the process as we speak. I think they're on their second reading. Beyond those three cities, we have been engaged in all the cities in Franklin County. So,
We expect Columbus will pass a week from today.
yeah,
Subject to
Everything. But
yeah.
if it does, I think that will stimulate the conversation even further. We already had a number of conversations, including a long conversation with COMA, Central Ohio Managers and Mayors Association, and they seem very receptive.
I attended the meeting at the month after that, and it seemed that all the suburban communities, other than what you
Yeah.
mentioned, were looking to pass this in the next 6 months to a year.
And again, should this pass, it's just the flavored product. So tobacco flavored e-cigarettes will still be in the market, as well as Marlboros, like the regular cigarettes that don't have the additive flavors like the menthol does that makes it cooler, easier to smoke. And unfortunately, you know, you can still get these online. We can't regulate that from the local level. So an adult who has chosen to use these products instead of smoking, they can still get them online.
Thank you. It would be great if you could share some sample legislation.
Sure, yeah, we have a model sample we can definitely email.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sounds great. Are there any other questions for our guests?
Just a small dose of clarity. In that 20 years ago, when we worked together to start the Smoke-Free Ohio, I actually wanted to start with the form of a resolution. And I reached out to a little organization called the Better Breathing Club. I don't know if it still exists. And I spoke with a contact there, and she said, you know, I think you might want to call this gentleman, Dr. Robert Crane, because he's actually working on something that's real similar to this. And it was before any of it had been, you know, in the open discussion at all. And from that, I learned that there was actually an opportunity to pursue this in the form of an ordinance rather than a resolution, just in, you know, kind of supportive measure. And I don't think it passed unanimously.
Oh, we don't think so, it was
I
6-1?
don't think it passed unanimously. There was a lot of conflict with a couple of members of council during that time that were not pleased with this. And then, of course, we suffered the referendum with, I think it only takes 60-some people to get on the ballot. So we passed it. Everyone else passed it, but we couldn't enforce it for almost a full year. It was actually longer than that. It was about a year. And during that year, everyone in Central Ohio came to Grandview Heights to smoke in the bars and restaurants. So it created the exact opposite effect for that year. We were inundated, and we couldn't do anything about it because it was subject to the public vote. When it did go to vote, it was in the 80th percentile of passing. And I thank you again for your dedication to this cause and for all the improvements that you've made for public health for all of us.
Good, thank you for inviting us.
Last thing I'll say, because we have a friend that's in the environmental space, the devices you have are disposable. These are the new cigarette butts of college campuses. We actually heard reports in one town where they were having plumbing issues at schools because kids are flushing them down the toilets.
Oh.
But those are all reusable devices that I showed you, so kids will use that for a week and toss it and go get a new one.
Disposable, not.
Disposable.
Disposable.
Not reusable, they're disposable, yeah, excuse me. Yeah.
I do want to know what, is this dance floor here for this team?
I know. Or
Share
Foursquare.
volleyball.
Yes.
Foursquare maybe, or this
Yeah.
is early pickleball.
Pickleball, yeah.
It's chair volleyball.
Chair volleyball.
Thank you so much, guys.
Very
Thank
good,
you.
thank you so much for
Thank you.
coming this evening. Enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on, we have council committee reports, finance.
Finance met at 5 PM this evening, and I can go over the legislation that was discussed that comes up on the agenda.
Thank you. Administration, Councilmember Edwards, Emergency Fund.
Similarly, planning administration met at previous to this at 6 o'clock, and we can discuss as they come up on the agenda.
Thank you. Recreation services and public facilities,
No meeting, no report.
safety,
No meeting, no report.
ad hoc economic development.
Economic development met at 6:30 tonight. We discussed TIF districts that will be on the agenda. We can discuss those as they come up.
Thank you. And the ad hoc aggregation exploration director reports.
Yes, we had a second meeting on that earlier this month, and more to come down the road.
Thank you. Council liaison reports, Grandview Library.
Today, the library's hours changed. They're now open at 9 in the morning instead of 10 on Monday through Thursday, but they're closing a half hour earlier, so they'll be closing at 8, Monday through Thursday. And they have the Guard Tower Game Store at 3600 Treeview Road donated over 20 new board games, and those can be checked out at the library. The Grandview gift box is now available to support the Library Foundation, and it includes treats from Prima, Pure Imagination, Stoffs, and the Historical Society. And you can get your Grandview Civic Welfare luminaries on the next 2 weekends, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. And there will be a New Year's Eve photo booth with costumes and props on Saturday, December 31st from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Thanks.
Thank you. Next we have the school. We had a lovely break. Now we're back. Extra long break and then grand reopening of the high school. So that will be exciting. Next we have the chamber.
The chamber will have their holiday celebration December 15th at 11:30 at the Scioto Country Club. That's it.
Thank you. Planning commission.
There were, to my knowledge, there were no applications, and no meeting was held for planning commission in November.
Thank you. CODA.
Code Advisory Board met last Tuesday, 29, for their the last meeting of the year. Some of the highlights, there are some bus routes that will contract a little more. Nothing that directly affects Grandview. The 75, which goes through the city to downtown, one change with that, and then starting in January, there'll be where it ends in the morning and when the first pickup in the evening, that will now be outside, like around Hyde and Main, rather than that terminal building. They continue to work with the Link Us program, particularly the Northwest Corridor. There was an article about that in the paper last Monday, and the Director Colker has been meeting with CODA regarding that. That's proceeding. One thing Council President Keeler asked about a couple times was the sales tax levy. They're kind of doing wait and see on that. They'd like to get it on the ballot in the next within one of the next 3 election cycles. They've got like a political arm that's kind of feeling it out with the voters to see when the best time to put that on the ballot would be. It's still up in the air. As the article said last Monday, that the Link Us program is going to be very, very difficult to do without that. The ridership is up a little bit, still down from 2019, primarily with a lot of the work from home, but it's picking up a little bit. They've had trouble getting, recruiting and retaining bus drivers. They've had a lot of applications the past few months. It sounds like about 150 qualified applicants in the past 3 months. But they've been very slow in hiring. There's been about an average of 4 being hired each month, so that's the challenge. But they are getting a lot of applicants for bus drivers. So that's pretty much the year-end summary.
Thank you. Moving on, Morpsey, no updates. Destination Grandview, Ms. Cassidy-Tinos is not here this evening. Sustainable 2050.
Yes, a few things. The Clean Ohio applications are something maybe to take a look at or be aware of the administration. I don't know that we've ever been able to apply for those, but they are available for local governments. Those are due March 10th, 2023. The application for Morpsey's technical assistance program is also now open. That's only open through this Friday, though. Morpsey is also teaming up with OSU City and Regional Planning and OSU Sustainability Institute to accept proposals from Sustainable 2050 members. And that's to work with the OSU studios and capstones to complete a project. And I guess I don't have a deadline for that one. But those are some kind of timely opportunities. And then the next Sustainable 2050 meeting is this Friday morning at the Morpsey offices. And I'm hoping to attend, though I do have a conflict I need to sort out. So I'm gonna try. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Kearns, Mayor's report.
Well, as mentioned, we overwhelmingly, the voters supported issue 32. We are very grateful for the community support. I'm also very grateful for the staff support to help get out information. There was a lot of information to put out, and it was a complex master plan to understand. So we've solved our large issue, and I guess I can't say enough about how positive this is for the future of the city. Leaf pickup ending Friday. Let's see, police department survey will be coming out this week. As you recall, we're switching off police 1 year, fire another year. And Holiday in the Heights is a rain or shine event, and on the Destination Grandview topic, I want to thank them for working with the business community to help promote this event.
Thank you. Director of Operations, Director Dvorsky.
Got a lot of activity, of course, on the building, very timely and very productive, I felt. To highlight some things in the building department, we just hired a new building inspector. Joe Kipp started with us last week. So we have 2 new building inspectors and a change in leadership. We have the Rail Restaurant is nearing completion. The AEP storage building's been approved for temporary occupancy. The Goodale South Tri-W building is very close to completion. All the residential units have been cleared for final occupancy in the first floor. They're working on the final punch list. The municipal building had a rough month. It was on a rainy day. It was raining in my office again. It damaged my keyboard, but fortunately not my desktop or screen. However, the building also did have, in the IT area, we had an electrical outage that affected the server room and the phone system. So we had a good amount of downtime this month. And basically, we've had several technicians and repair workers throughout the building. So very grateful for residents approving the new building. It can come in more timely basis. And then the final thing is the service department has worked with Columbus to remedy an issue affecting the operation of the interconnect system between Columbus and Grandview traffic signals, and they're pleased to report now that along the Goodale Boulevard corridor it's working as intended. So that's all.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the director?
For all the offices equipped with tarps and raincoats now for the next 2 years.
Pretty much.
All right, next, Director of Finance, Director Miller. Busy time of the year for you.
Yes, I talked a lot already tonight. The big thing in my November report is we, the mayor, council president, and I met with bond council and with our municipal advisor on November 18th to discuss the post-election steps relating to the bond issue. We're planning to move forward and probably issue bonds in February. So we will get those proceeds and we'll be moving right along. I plan to have Brian Cooper in for a finance committee meeting in January just to kind of update everybody on this is what's going to happen and this is how it works.
Okay. Do you have any questions for the director? Moving on, Director of Planning and Community Development. Another busy month.
Another busy
Well,
month.
It's so busy.
Yes, a very fun month, actually. Just a few highlights. I think you've all heard by now that we do have funding secured for the First Avenue upgrades between Grandview Avenue and Virginia. So we'll be starting to do some community outreach early in 2023 about that project. The new Fire EMS Police and Administrative Services building, there's lots and lots going on. The mayor has convened, I think one of the things you might be curious about, mayor has convened a design advisory group as we begin to get into design on that building, composed of folks in the community that have particular design expertise, people who are in either architecture or landscape architecture. So they have been engaged in providing some goal setting for the building. And design, preliminary design is in process now. We're also engaging with the team around sustainability. Just had another meeting using a LEED checklist, but as we mentioned before, not registering with LEED to help guide the development of the project. Some of those requirements will be included in the RFP going out to the CMARs tomorrow, the 3 shortlisted CMARs, to give them a sense of what they'll be obligated to do. Those shortlisted CMRs will be getting as I mentioned, the RFP tomorrow, which is requesting price proposals for them. So it's essentially the cost of the work plus a fee, sort of the format of it. So we'll be getting information on their fee proposals in early January and having interviews with them middle of January, aiming to have a contract ready to enter into early in February. So you'll start to see some legislation around that early next year. The Parks building also is underway, and we've also begun having some meetings with folks who are interested in that building as well. So people who are center members, people who are frequent users of the Parks and Recreation programming, as well as current staff members have been meeting with the design team there, Myers and Associates, to offer them some input as to what matters to everyone in the facility. One of the topics that's come up is renaming the facility to be something that's more descriptive of what its future might be. So we haven't really gotten too far on that, but it's sort of recurring themes beginning to show its head. Next round of meetings for that is next week, and we do anticipate also there are some very early kind of massing design concepts. On the regional level, there are things continuing to be afoot. As we mentioned, met with MORPC about their regular service and opportunities for augmentation given changes in the city. There's a meeting on the North Knot, the Olentangy Kinnear Herrick Knot, this Thursday, actually. Our city engineer is attending alongside me, as well as folks from Upper Arlington, Clinton Township, and City of Columbus, Franklin County engineer, to start to think about how that can all get sorted out and what that might impact. So those are some of the fun things that are going on.
Do you have any questions, Director
I may have missed it, but January 23rd is, at least tentatively, we've invited the Ernie McHenry group to do a public presentation here right before council, so at the 6 p.m. time frame. We'll send you all an invitation, but kind of wanted to give you an idea of when to expect that.
Clarifying question?
Yes.
When you refer to a knot, can you say more about that? Furthering my understanding.
How the roads don't really, come
That's how I
come-
understood it,
yeah,
it's like a
come
tangle
together in
of
a
traffic.
logical way.
Yeah.
What's
got
that?
it. A tangle of traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
however, that is 315 and all those intersections.
I don't think I've
Yeah,
ever.
So we go under 315.
John, just make sure I understood and heard that correctly.
I think it's now.
What's that?
known as-
Okay.
All right, next we have city attorney report.
I submitted my report and would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, any questions? No. Moving on, old business item number 1.
Ordinance 2022-11, an ordinance to authorize the city of Grandview Heights to establish an opt-out governmental electric aggregation program for residential and non-mercantile consumers located within the incorporated areas of the city of Grandview Heights, to direct the Franklin County Board of Elections to submit the ballot question to the city's electors on the November 8, 2022 ballot and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Councilmember Panzera and Director Dvorsky as chairs. How is that going to go? For the aggregation exploration ag.
No, I would defer to a chair.
I do.
Well, we had met on it and we talked about, some of the implications of, and approaches and thought that would be achievable.
Thank you. Was there a recommendation from the committee?
There seemed to be support for doing that, yes.
I would phrase it the same. I don't think there was an explicit action. Do you
Yeah,
recall?
there wasn't a recommendation
Okay.
for a specific, timeframe or movement. There was discussion about challenges and with May.
What election date?
Yeah, so what I would propose, and we can discuss it here if folks want to, would be to table to January 9th. And reason being is that I think by January 9th, we would know whether there might be a statewide ballot issue. There's an unfortunate attempt to have, unfortunate is my language, to have a statewide ballot issue concerning constitutional amendments to raise folks have been following this in the news, to raise the threshold to a 60% majority instead of a 50% majority. It is thought, and among folks who are working on that issue, some of my colleagues at the Environmental Council, that actually will go forward in lame duck, and that they would put it on the May ballot. So while that's unfortunate, it would create an opportunity where we wouldn't have to pay for that election, which is one of the big concerns I think that we heard from the administration and from folks in the committee. And so I think that by bumping this, tabling it to January 9th, we'll know at that time, is my sense, whether or not we would have a May primary that we would not need to finance with city resources. So that would be my kind of proposal for folks to consider.
Question,
Yes,
that last committee meeting, Director Cruz, we briefly discussed, like, I don't think it was clear, was it definitive, if that's the only issue that's on the ballot, the aggregation in the city initiative, the city would have to pay, would bear the cost.
Right.
However, but if, say, this initiative, she was talking. Okay.
That's not my understanding, Director Kazan, that we would share in the cost. If there's a statewide ballot issue, I don't believe we would share the cost.
We still incur, I think we still incur some costs because the machine, X number of machines come here. I don't have precise information. We were given information by the county Board of Elections that it could be as low as 5,000 and as high as 32,000.
What if there were other,
Right, that's where we drive it, is how many municipalities would share. So if there's a county measure, if there's a state measure, each person who's got some kind of a measure on would share in that cost.
Potentially some contested,
Judicial.
judicial.
Exactly.
Okay.
So do we typically pay some portion of elections? Okay, so
We
that's not
always pay.
atypical then for
For
normal.
some, but
Okay.
we're typically on the lower end because it's
Right.
like, one of a number of statewide
I
things.
hear you.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. I had placed a call at Board of Elections too and had a brief conversation with someone in that division.
You
And we
want to
took,
talk to Jeff Mackey.
that's who I talked to. And there will be Columbus. Most likely Columbus will have primaries. They have a ward system now for the first time, City of Columbus Council. So my understanding is there's most likely city races, though I don't know if we'll know definitively. I think we can know more, though, after we get through lame duck, we'll know about the state ballot and the timeline issue. And then City of Columbus,
If
hopefully we
I-
could also know more. Yeah.
If I may, we may know more about the election, but as an ex officio member and speaking on behalf of the administration, the city has to be in a position to be able to move forward and implement something. And it may be simply implementing a plan that doesn't get really triggered yet, but I can say with certainty that no progress will be made between now and January 9th on that because of the holidays.
Yeah, I didn't infer that there was an expectation of that.
So I just want to
I think
make,
that-
like, if you're bringing it up for vote on January 9th,
It-
I don't think we'll be any further along in understanding.
I agree. I think the decision that is in place, or the consideration that's in place for whether this is in May or November is the simple topic. I don't think there's any action plan required on part of the administration. This legislation simply enables that process to begin, and without it, there's a lot of unanswered questions, and that's why we're convening the committee, but this is only a first step from my perspective, so I have no expectations of such.
Yeah, my main concern would be the city bearing the entire brunt of the
Right.
burden of the elections.
I don't will know too much. I would agree with the January 9th. I would move it to at least the 23rd, if not the first meeting in February, just to make sure that you have the information that you need in order, yes.
The only issue, it would need to go to the Board of Election by February 1st is the deadline for the May primary.
Then I
so.
would say mid-month in January. My question though is in the preamble, it says November 8th. Do we need to readjust that language?
So if it goes
We would.
into January, it'll get a new number, then we can do a new preamble without having a need for, multiple readings all over again.
Yeah.
The only other thing I would add is, when this was first introduced, I think there was a desire to get on this train as quickly as possible in order to experience some beneficial savings. I think the landscape has changed tremendously in this space. And I think a lot of communities are experiencing the opposite of savings, just as a result of market forces right now in terms of, the buying power. So the urgency that may have been there to at least get a plan going to move in the direction of the opt-out program may not be there, may not be as viable today as it was, a number of months ago.
Would it be true, sorry,
Yes, please.
would it be true though if, to Councilman Panzera's point, we would be enabled to move on something when the time was right? So whereas we didn't have the ability to do that when the conditions were right, passing what we would be proposing here would just put us in that position to be able to catch that right time.
Absolutely, but, and the only thing I'll say without going into a whole lot of details, there are people who know a lot more about this than I do. It's a commodity market, and the purchases are made like a year in advance or some long period in advance. So even if we were able to jump into the market in May or in October, realistically, the pricing has already been set for the foreseeable future at that point.
And when we talked about it, I remember Matt Jordan being here, and I thought it wasn't so much the savings, but for the environmental impact. I thought it was more the draw for the consumers here that we were looking at it. Like, he said, well, possibly maybe you would save $1. It was very little, a very minimal amount that he suggested you might save, that it was more about helping the environment.
If I may, I think the concern is that you don't want to pay too much, though.
Oh, right, yeah.
If the prices are too
Yeah.
high.
I agree, but it was just that it wasn't, only how it was phrased, how you phrased it, that we were doing it for savings, but I hadn't taken it with that impression. And I also was wondering, I don't know, Megan, if you know offhand, or anybody, how much did we pay for putting issue 32 on the ballot? I'm just curious, because I don't know how, there were many other things. Issue 32,
It's done, the county auditor actually withholds it from our real estate tax, so we probably won't know until March.
okay, thanks.
And keep in mind, that's not one where that was the only thing on the ballot.
No, I know, there are
Okay,
many
one
things,
shot.
right, I just wondered.
All right,
So, is there a mo-
we will need a motion, or unless, I mean, we could vote on it, but it sounds like we would like to table this. Is there a motion?
Yeah, I sort of constructed mine as I didn't say a motion, but I guess I heard you say a different date, but I still think we should have a little bit of cushion. So I wanted to move, I do move to table to date certain of January 9th, 2023.
Second.
Motion and second, so please call the roll.
Edwards,
Yes.
Houston,
Yes.
Kozak,
Yes.
Panzera,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
President Keeler.
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-11 has been tabled until date certain of January 9th.
Thank you. Old business item number 2.
Item number 2 is ordinance 2022-23, an ordinance to accept the dedication of 0.003 acres of real property to create a sidewalk easement and declaring it an emergency.
Thank you, Councilmember Edwards, your agreement, or, yeah.
The planning administration met prior to this and also at the November 21st meeting. This has to do with the property at 1217 Grandview Avenue. The committee recommended approval to this body.
Thank you.
Move to approve.
Motion and second, clerk, please call the roll.
Who was the second, please? Okay, thank you. Houston,
Yes.
Kozak,
Yes.
Panzera,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Edwards,
Yes.
President Keeler.
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-23 has been approved.
Thank you. Old business item number 3.
Ordinance 2022-24, an ordinance to grant a 0.772 plus acre easement on a portion of certain city-owned property to facilitate access across a newly constructed school parking lot and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Councilmember Edwards.
Planning administration met prior to this and also addressed it at November 21st. Has to do with the new middle high school parking lot, cleaning up some of the things that have happened there. Committee did make recommendation for approval to this body.
Thank you. Is there a discussion? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Thanks. Vote that's the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Clerk, please call the roll.
Houston,
Yes.
Kozak,
Yes.
Panzera,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Edwards,
Yes.
President Keeler.
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-24 has been approved.
Thank you. Old business item number 4.
Ordinance 2022-25, an ordinance to amend section 111.02 of the codified ordinances of the city of Grandview Heights, Ohio, to increase the salary of the city council members and the president of city council in accordance with section 3.5 of the charter of the city.
Thank you, Councilmember Panzera.
Thank you. I appreciate the floor. As we know, this was not assigned to committee so that we can have a full overview. It affects all of us and our future leadership. This is a second reading. I would like to engage a little further with the city attorney between now and our next meeting to understand the implications and possibilities of potentially assigning this in spirit to the Charter Review Committee, which convenes every 8 years?
10 years.
And possibly formulating a framework by which they could advance a recommendation to council. In the meantime, I am supportive of the salary structure that is that's illustrated in the current packet, but I would like to consider another section that would essentially kind of depoliticize the great deal of this and set it up on a higher level of continuum with the safety net, let's call it, of council being able to reverse or modify those, if needed, be it for budgetary purposes or times of peril, et cetera, whatever that might require. So I'm open to council's, my colleagues' thoughts on that additional section and how that might be able to be handled in a different way in the future.
That's an interesting thing. Is that something that you think can happen between now and next week, when it will be a third reading?
Oh, referring it, I mean, we could reconvene the Charter Review Commission,
No,
but there's no
I
way we
wasn't
would
in-
act
No,
on.
not actually assigning it to them. He's proposing language that
Correct.
would permanently assign
Yes.
it to them
Correct.
to review this as they review the
That's
charter.
Yeah, barring any
Okay.
future change in that
Yeah.
policy, yeah.
So
No.
a lot of communities have embedded it.
Yes, Councilmember Houston.
This is clarifying, to make sure I'm on the same page with you, Mr. Pansera. So we're not, that you're still proposing for this to go through our approval, right?
That is correct.
For passage, but adding some additional language to the effect.
Adding some additional
Okay.
language that would reduce council's direct role in these, because
Sure.
this is something that unfortunately we just have to do
Yeah.
every so often.
Right.
And I think that it is definitely worth considering, I would phrase it that way, to discuss having it and having it assigned as part of the charter review, and then for them to bring, as they do now, recommendations to those charter changes in the same way that they have been for many decades.
Thank you.
I like that.
So second reading is sufficient from
We will record this as a
sponsors'
second reading.
perspective?
Any additions that you have, I would suggest sending out as soon as possible, given the short timeline of next week voting.
I don't think it'll be too clumsy. I think there's a way we can drop it in here pretty easy.
All right, we look forward to seeing that. We will again record that as a second reading. Moving on, old business item number 5.
Ordinance 2022-26, an ordinance amending the salary of the mayor of the city of Grandview Heights in accordance with section 2.3 of the charter of the city.
These two are very related. I assume you would propose a similar addition to this one as well, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And they're directly related.
Yes. All right, we will record ordinance 2022-26 as a second reading. Moving on, old business item number 6.
Ordinance 2022-27, an ordinance amending the salary ordinance of the city of Grandview Heights and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Councilmember Edwards.
Planning and administration met prior to this. This had to do with adjusting compensation for a few positions and adding a planning and community development specialist role. The committee had a good discussion and made a recommendation to this group of approval. So my second reading.
Thank you. We will record that as a second reading. Old business item number 7.
Ordinance 2022-28, an ordinance to approve supplemental appropriations for the city share of the Bobcat Way Fairview Avenue Transformation Project for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2022, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith, your committee met.
Yeah, yes, finance met on this at 5 p.m. this evening. This is basically for the Fairview Avenue project. This is the matching funds for the OPWC grant. It is $165 thousand to the street improvements and 170 to parks. The committee unanimously recommends approval to council, as well as the administration would like to have this passed tonight, to suspend the rules in order to get the contracts executed sooner rather than later.
Thank you.
And committee approved that as well.
Okay, recommended approval on
Recommend.
suspension, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any discussion on this legislation or suspension of rules? Is there a motion?
I'll move to suspend the rules.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Clerk, please call the roll.
Kozak.
Yes.
Panzera.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Edwards.
Yes.
Houston.
Yes.
President Keeler.
Yep.
The rules for ordinance 2022-28 have been suspended.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
That's a motion and a second by Councilmember Houston. Clerk, please call the roll.
Panzera.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Edwards.
Yes.
Houston.
Yes.
Kozak.
Yes.
President Keeler.
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-28 has been approved.
All right. Old business item number 8.
Ordinance 2022-29, an ordinance to make annual appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Grandview Heights, state of Ohio during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2023.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith, your committee met.
Yes, Finance Committee met on this, the general operating budget at 6 this evening. Director Miller gave a presentation, as well as Police Chief, Fire Chief, Director Coker, gave presentations as well regarding new hires in the respective departments. We had an exhaustive discussion on this ordinance. We're going to continue to wrap things up on that next week in finance. No recommendations were made. And also the next meeting, we're going to have a lengthy discussion on 2022-30, the capital budget.
Thank you. We will record that as a second reading. Old business number 9.
Ordinance 2022-30, an ordinance to make appropriations to various departments within the city of Grandview Heights municipal government to purchase equipment and make capital improvements in 2023.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith already spoke on that. We will record that as a second reading. Old business item number 10.
Ordinance 2022-31, an ordinance to establish the Goodell mixed-use TIF area, declaring the improvement of certain real property located in the city of Grandview Heights, Franklin County, Ohio, to be a public purpose, declaring such property to be exempt from real property taxation, designating specific public infrastructure improvements that, once made, will directly benefit the parcels for which improvement is declared to be a public purpose, requiring annual service payments in lieu of taxes, establishing a municipal public improvement tax increment equivalent fund, authorizing compensation payments to the Grandview Heights City School District, and providing related authorizations pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Sections 5709.40B, 5709.42, 5709.43, 5709.832, and 5709.85.
Thank you. Councilmember Edwards.
Yes, the Economic Development Committee met prior to this. We talked about this piece of legislation and the two following ones. These have to do with establishing commercial TIF districts in 3 areas of town. The Goodell mixed use area, Southern Gateway, and the neighborhood business TIF district. We had a good conversation. We had a guest from Ricker and Eckler who came in and shared some additional contacts with us. The committee recommended we move forward for approval on all of these.
Thank you. We will record that as a second reading. Old business item number 11.
Ordinance 2022-32, an ordinance establishing the Southern Gateway TIP area, declaring the improvement of certain real property located in the city of Grandview Heights, Franklin County, Ohio, to be a public purpose, declaring such property to be exempt from real property taxation, designating specific public infrastructure improvements that, once made, will directly benefit the parcels for which improvement is declared to be a public purpose, requiring annual service payments in lieu of taxes, establishing a municipal public improvement tax increment equivalent fund, authorizing compensation payments to the Grandview Heights City School District, and providing related authorizations pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Sections 5709.40B, 5709.42, 5709.43, 5709.832, and 5709.85.
Thank you. You spoke to this already. I believe this is the one that needs substitution, correct, Director Comfort?
That's the next one, I think.
No, it is 32.
Oh, it is? Excuse me. I thought we were on 33. No?
Oh,
32?
we're on 32.
I got ahead of myself.
Okay, we'll get there. Might take a while, whole paragraph on these things.
Move to substitute to the current version.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Clerk, please call the roll on substitution.
Smith,
Yes.
Edwards,
Yes.
Houston. Yes. Kozak,
Yes.
Panzera,
Yes.
President Keeler.
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-32 has been substituted to version 120522.
Thanks for catching that, whoever caught it. That's a little more detail there.
Yes. And just for our audience out there, there was a parcel that was inadvertently missed, and this will make sure that it's included. We will record that as a second reading. Old business item number 12. What's the record for number of business items?
It's tonight.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Ordinance 2022-33, an ordinance establishing the neighborhood business TIP area, declaring the improvement of certain real property located in the city of Grandview Heights, Franklin County, Ohio, to be a public purpose, declaring such property to be exempt from real property taxation, designating specific public infrastructure improvements that, once made, will directly benefit the parcels for which improvement is declared to be a public purpose, requiring annual service payments in lieu of taxes, establishing a municipal public improvement tax increment equivalent fund, authorizing compensation payments to the Grandview Heights City School District, and providing related authorizations pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 5709.40B, 5709.42, 5709.43, 5709.832, and 5709.85.
Thank you. That was already spoken on. We will record that as a second reading.
Point of order.
Yes.
I might, so others can check this, but it was Williams Avenue that we talked about, right?
We're not to Williams yet.
Okay, I think it's the next one though, not the 32 that did need substituted.
No. There was a missing parcel on that one, which is what we substituted to, which is different than the Williams Avenue.
That's a
Oh,
different
okay.
topic.
Different topic.
But it's a substitution nonetheless.
We're getting there.
Yeah.
I'm not gotten
Okay.
yet.
Excuse me.
Yeah, we're getting there. All right. Anyways, we've already discussed 33. We will record that as a second reading. Moving on, old business item number 13.
Ordinance 2022-34, an ordinance to grant the city of Grandview Heights a sanitary sewer easement with respect to 0.168 acre of real property located along Bobcat Avenue within the Grandview Yard and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Council Member Edwards.
Planning and Administration met on this evening. This is the one that will require substitution to include Williams Avenue in this description. Committee was supportive of this and recommends approval.
Amendment, just for clarification.
Yeah, and then that's the substitution.
Amendment.
So is that a motion to amend to add Williams Avenue?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second? All right, thank you, Councilmember Houston. Clerk, please call the roll on the amendments.
Edwards,
Yes.
Houston,
Yes.
Kozak,
Yes.
Panzera,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
President Keeler.
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-34 has been amended.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? No, we'll record that as a second reading. Moving on to old business item number 14.
Ordinance 2022-35, an ordinance to grant the city of Grandview Heights a sanitary sewer easement with respect to 0.110 acres of real property located along Bobcat Avenue within the Grandview Yard and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Councilmember Edwards. Anything to add to this one?
Nope, nothing to add. The P&A, Planning and Administration Committee met on this one, made a recommendation of approval to this body.
Thank you. We'll record that as a second reading. Moving on, old business item number 15.
Ordinance 2022-36, an ordinance to grant the city of Grandview Heights a sanitary sewer easement with respect to 0.031 acres of real property located along Bobcat Avenue within the Grandview Yard and declaring an emergency.
Thank you again, Councilmember Edwards. Anything?
Planning Administration met before this, made a recommendation of approval to this body.
Thank you. We'll record that as a second reading. Old business item number 16.
Ordinance 2022-37, an ordinance to grant 0.001 acre encroachment and a 0.007 acre encroachment to an easement originally granted to the city easement by NRI Equity Land Investments LLC owner to facilitate a private construction project to be known as the Devon Apartments within the development block 9 of the Grandview Yard and declaring an emergency.
Thank you again, Councilmember Edwards.
Planning Administration met, the committee met prior to this and made recommendation of approval to this body.
Thank you. We'll record that as a second reading. Moving on, new business item number 1.
Ordinance 2022-38, an ordinance to approve transfers and make appropriations to continue contracts for design and owner's representative services to initiate pre-construction management services for the city's fire EMS, police and administrative services facilities, and the Parks and Recreation facility at McKinney Street.
Thank you. Administration with Mayor Kearns, Director Felker, anyone want to talk on this?
I can talk about it.
Okay.
Earlier in the fall, before issue 32 passed, we started doing some work with Hill and Associates as an owner's rep, Irving McHenry as an architect, and Myers and Associates as an architect. We told all of them in these contracts, if issue 32 does not pass, we're not going to complete the full contract. These are the remaining balances of those contracts since issue 32 did pass that will allow us to just complete that work. This is for it's gonna have 3 readings, it'll be approved in 2023. We just didn't know if issue 32 was gonna pass when we did the original capital plan, so we're doing this separately. And then you'll also see that we're transferring $6 million from the general fund to the general improvement fund. And in all of our presentations, we discussed that, the city would be paying $6 to $10 million. This is the initial $6 million. We may need to transfer more later, but this will get us started.
Okay. Well, we will record that as first reading, and I will start with finance. Other business, we have none. Comments from council members, are there any comments?
I have one.
Councilmember
No, go
Hill.
ahead. It's okay.
I was just wondering, this came up because of a person who wrote in, you said that somebody had sent a question for the council, but Sean Dorsey. But I wasn't aware until I was reading through Chief Starnes' report that he said he met with people from Nationwide and security. And I asked in an email today, so that there's security over there that Nationwide has. I just wasn't aware of this, and I just wondered what that looks like, and it's security for those parking garages, or
It's for the development.
patrolling?
They own a lot of property, they own, apartment buildings with larger number of inhabitants, and they have private security, and we partner with them regularly.
Yeah, you can see them walking around sometimes, they're in blue t-shirts usually,
Oh.
and black pants.
Okay, I just wasn't sure what that looked like, if they're in cruisers or unmarked cars, or they're driving around. I didn't know if they were walking around and.
I've always seen them either walking or they have a car that says Nationwide on the
Yep.
side. I think occasionally I've seen them on bikes, so.
Nationwide on your side.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I mean, it's been a long night. Yes, we've worked with them on all kinds of issues through the years.
Do they, because I know in a lot of his reports, Chief Starnes has talked about problems with that gym, like people being followed into the gym and stuff stolen from their lockers, or they see people leaving their cars, so then they break into the cars. Are the Nationwide people there monitoring those parking garages? I'm just wondering, I don't know.
In general, yes.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, they're not, yeah,
Okay.
they're longer in full development.
There's security cameras on all, I think all the buildings, all the corners of the buildings.
Okay.
There's cameras on the garages, or at least they're looking in and so on.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
sure. Councilmember Panzera, you had something?
Nothing of critical concern. I was going to offer congratulations to Council President. Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed your trip. And I think we actually had I think we beat you by one agenda item while you were gone. So technically, this might be the
Do I
second
need to bring you a
one.
little crown?
No.
I have the biggest agenda.
No, you just missed all of it.
Good,
Yeah,
an
so
hour and
anybody-
23.
Yeah.
Pretty good for an hour and 23.
Well, they're all second readings.
Yeah, great. Are there any other, round of applause for Leilani reading all
Yeah.
this stuff?
We did that while you were gone.
Right, we are putting the whole packet together, I mean,
Well, on
so,
vacation.
yeah, that's, anyways. Are there any other comments from council members? No, okay, I'd just like to thank, everyone, especially Councilmember Pinzer for, stepping in for me and Councilmember Smith when we were, gone. You know, it's very exciting. Everything looks different now. Anyway, this is great, and unless there's anything else, yeah.
Holiday party, Monday noon, or I think it's 11 to 1. I sent you guys an email, but just a reminder.
Is that down here?
No, service
It's
center.
1260.
Service center, that's right, I have that. Okay.
Okay, yeah. And I've tried it, I wouldn't walk there.
Yeah.
That's right, you ran.
Yeah, it's like a on ramp, going around the curve.
It's a knot, it's always like.
It's a,
It's a herrick.
yeah, it's a little scary. Walk here, there's no sidewalk. Okay, well, with that, we will adjourn at 8:25.
The traffic, yeah.
This all sounds very.